And we are live.
All right, welcome. Good evening to everyone that's joined us. We are at our Study Committee on Independent Police Oversight Commission meeting at 6 o'clock on December 14, 2020. Can we do roll call, please?
Sure. Remember to say where you're attending virtually from. Sade Callwood.
Here, I'm attending from Douglas, Massachusetts, Worcester County.
Kelly Ellsworth Etchison.
Hi, I am attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Chuck Grigsby.
Ingham County, East Lansing, Michigan, present.
Cedric Haro.
Present, attending virtually from Mason, Michigan, Ingham County.
Chris Root.
Present from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Sharon Reed Davis. Quentin Tyler.
Quentin Tyler, reporting from Lexington, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Williams. Eric, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Eric Williams, East Lansing, Ingham County.
Tanya Williams.
Tanya Williams from DeWitt, Michigan, Clinton County.
And Ron Bacon.
Present, East Lansing, Michigan, Clinton County.
We did get word that Helen Josephson and Noel Garcia will not be with us this evening.
We have quorum. Thank you, Diane, for roll call. Appreciate that. Just a couple of housekeeping things. When you want to make a motion or second that motion, please raise your hand, as well as our votes as well. That would help me out, recognizing everyone on the call and acknowledge everyone that's got going on. I believe that's all I have for housekeeping. Did you want to add something, City Manager Lahanas?
Yes, just one quick reminder. If we could remember to try not to use the chat feature for discussion purposes. If someone wants to send some resource for sharing, the best way to do it is send it to Diane after the meeting, and then she can forward that one direction to the group. I just had some concerns from folks in the public. They want to just be able to see all of the discussion or see all the discussion. And if it's in the chat, they can't see all that. So that's just one thing. If we could remember to do that. I forgot last time, truth be told, someone shared something and I totally didn't remember to say something. So if we could keep that in mind and try to remind each other, best way to share a resource or a link, send it to Diane, let her forward that to the group as a resource during the week. And then it's one direction communication. It's not the chat back and forth thing, which is just better for transparency. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on. Assume everyone's got a chance to look at the agenda of 12/14/2020. I just noticed here on item 4.3 for Commissioner Tyler's report, it's not, do you guys have a link to that on the city website, or is that not included? Because my version here, I don't see the link there. So we might have to add that in after the fact, or his draft there. Am I correct on that? It's there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong? Okay, good. I'm glad I'm wrong. Okay. Assuming everyone's got a chance to go ahead and look at that, I'll entertain a motion for approval of 12/14/2020's agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Moved by Commissioner Root and seconded by Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison. Is there any discussion in regards to the agenda? All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so moved. Same thing with the item 12/7/2020 approval of the minutes. Everyone's had an opportunity to look at those and make sure that they're accurate. If there is no discussion on that, I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes as well. Moved by Vice Chair Williams, seconded by Commissioner Haro. Is there any discussion in regards to the 12/7/2020 minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. All right, we'll go into item 1.4, written communication. We don't have as much as we did last week for meetings, so it should go pretty quickly. We have the first item on listed information in the chat, December 7th, 2020. I think City Manager Lahanas just kind of really addressed that and making sure that we have good habits with making sure that we're transparent with that. Any questions, reactions, comments to those minutes at all? Or excuse me, those that information in the chat?
Mhm.
All right. And then the court order release of complaint forms, it was submitted, and it was an example for us to see kind of really how to look at that form and have an example of that. Did anyone have any reactions or comments in regards to that form? Okay. All right, and then we have the next item listed is the chat file for 12/7/20 study committee meeting. Again, that's the chats that was listed that we wanted to be transparent on. Does anyone have any comments or reactions to the information within those chats? All right, move on. And then finally, of our written communication, we have the use of force follow-up response that was submitted. Those were questions that, as we talked about it before, and the staff was able to get us those great answers to that. Did anyone have any comments, questions, or did any of the staff want to comment on any of the different things that were listed in that written communication? All right, I just had one little quick question. It's kind of not really related to it, but when it comes to the use of force classification, I was looking at the answer to one of the questions there, and how does it work for outside looking in when you have multiple officers involved with the use of force? Do each officers write their own report and talk about the use of force and identify that within the case file, or is it one main officer, the arresting officer, I guess, or what have you, gets that information from other officers, including one report? How does it work for that tab for multiple people who are involved in the use of force contact with a citizen?
So a little bit of both. The way it works is the primary officer is going to pull the actual report number, which is that long string of numbers that you'll see on the top of the case report. That officer is responsible for adding those file classes, those 4-digit codes, to denote, whether it was PPCT or taser display, taser use. The officer will then the primary officer then completes a narrative. But each individual officer that used force, so if there's 3 additional officers that used force during the incident, they're responsible for completing a supplemental narrative to articulate their actions and why they took the actions that they took. So we're only going to have one actual police report, but you're going to have a narrative from every officer that used force within that police report, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you. And so as we kind of discussed before, most of the time or a lot of times there's only one classification of use of force that kind of is on some of the reports I've seen. I don't think I've seen any official reports recently, but so you have the primary officer who does his or her thing, and then you have the supplemental report. So does the supplemental officer reporting also go into that tab, or is it just the one main officer that does it?
It should be the one main officer, but that first main officer, the primary officer, should be placing, if there's multiple levels of force, so if there's a taser display and then PPCT used by different officers, that primary officer should be including the file classes to denote that as such. And that's one of the struggles that we have with that system. And so there's a review process that is supposed to catch that. Of course, we all make mistakes, so sometimes it doesn't get caught. But if there's different types of force used within an incident, those file classes should be included, primarily because that's how we track things. We track things by those file classes.
Is that the person that is that the shift supervisor?
Yeah, there's several levels of review at this point where the shift supervisor takes a look at it. If it is a case that is going to our detective bureau, the detective lieutenant will take a look at it. And now we have another layer with this administrative review, where on a weekly basis, we're running essentially audits, if you will, to make sure that file classes are being added into police reports correctly.
Thank you for the rapid fire answers on those questions. Appreciate that. All right, I think we'll move on if no one else has anything to ask about that. Yes, Ms. Commissioner Root.
Regarding follow-up questions, At the last meeting, it was suggested that the subgroup dealing with the case report, excuse me, not the case report, our report to the council, could look at whether we have any other information needs for the report. And Noel and Sade and I were not able to get that put together by tonight, but we will do it, we expect, by our next meeting. So if you have any follow-up questions that occur to you in the meantime, you could let one of us know, and we can try to incorporate the remaining questions that we think we need information about.
Thank you, Commissioner Root. I think we'll go ahead and move on. All right, thank you. All right, item 1.5, pursuant to MCL 15263, subsection 1, limiting public comment to 5 minutes per individual for today's electronic meeting. I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and enforce that rule. Moved by Vice Chair Williams. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tyler. Is there any discussion in regards to item 1.5, limiting public comment to 5 minutes? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? So move. We'll limit public comment to 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to item 2, communication from the audience. Justin, do we have anyone on the line tonight?
Yes, Chuck, we currently have one caller in the queue. That phone number is ending in 753. Phone number ending in 753. You may unmute and address the committee.
Good evening. My name is Edmund Rushton. Can you all hear me?
We can, sir. Go ahead, please.
All right. Thank you very much. So I would like to call your attention to item 4.1, motion 3 here. And it looks like the study committee has intention to get testimony from the Ingham County prosecutor. This would be Carol Seaman, or would this be somebody from the Ingham County prosecutor's office?
Hasn't been decided yet.
Hasn't been decided yet?
I'll try to get an answer. I'll try to get an answer to that question for you.
I can try. I think we put
Okay,
out
yes,
an
please.
invitation and see if it's the prosecutor or an assistant prosecutor who would be able to speak on the matters the commission wants to hear. So I think it'd be up to them, but I think we would just put the invitation out.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good to me. I'm just reading it over here, and it says that whoever will be giving testimony will be speaking on accountability in the county prosecutor's office regarding the use of Brady lists, charging decisions for low-level offenses such as resisting and obstructing, and other initiatives at the county level. I think we'd be doing this process a great disservice if we did not address the county prosecutor's office in the context of what has put this study committee in motion and what will eventually put the oversight committee in motion. And that was the case of Andrew Stevenson earlier this year. And the county prosecutor's office was quite heavily involved with the decision-making behind why originally charges were considered, they were originally considering bringing charges against Andrew Stevenson, and eventually decided to drop those charges. So I suppose I'd like to ask all of you today, because I think it's absolutely necessary that whoever our representatives get to speak to from the county prosecutor's office, I think it's an utmost imperative for the integrity of this process that somebody ask the question, what the hell happened with Andrew Stevenson? So I'd just like to get all your opinions on it and ask if all of you would be in favor of making a point at the meeting with the county prosecutor's office to inquire about what led to the result of the case regarding Andrew Stevenson.
Thank you. Just so I understand your question clearly, are you talking about the results of what they decided not to do with the case as far as moving it on to the state level? What are you referring to specifically?
I would say, I suppose it's a two-parter, because for a while, the intention from the county prosecutor's office was not to re-examine the case of Anthony Loggins and Andrew Stevenson, and that the discussion surrounding that case began in late March, and we didn't get any kind of answer from the county prosecutor's office until mid-June. And then another 3 months later, we hear that the charges have been dropped. We weren't given much information as to why they decided to take another look initially at Andrew Stevenson's case, and we weren't given too much information as well as to why they ended up dropping Andrew Stevenson's case as well. So I suppose it would be a two-parter to ask both, why did you decide in June to take another look at it, and why did you decide in September to throw it out? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for the clarification. Did you have anything else you want to address while you were on the line?
Really, I think that's the most important thing here. If we're going to be having a conversation with the county prosecutor's office, I think we should be upfront with them and upfront with the people about what information we really need to get from them, because it's more than just matters of their principles and their morals and the standards they hold at their office. There are specific decisions that the county prosecutor's office has made recently that lots of people in this community have serious questions about that they don't feel have been answered. So I just wanted to know if all of you would be in favor of that.
Thank you, Mr. Rushing, for your call. Appreciate that. Did any of the commissioners or staff want to respond to the caller's question or inquiry? I'll just say to the caller directly that, I highly encourage you, when we do have, a presentation or have someone come in, a representative, that you call in as you've done tonight and really weigh in on your concerns and the things that you specifically want to be addressed. I definitely would like to learn more about their process, personally, doing what we do here on this commission. But I think also your call, your participation that night will also be helpful for us to be able to get some of those answers to your questions. Appreciate your call. Thank you tonight.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and move to item 3.1 if there's no other response or reactions to the call. All right, on item 3.1, we have old business, continued community survey discussion. We started this conversation with City Manager Lahanas, and we kind of talked about, he talked about a little bit kind of how we were going about the process, and we're just going to continue that tonight. And did anyone have a moment to think about maybe offering maybe some recommendations, suggestions, or have questions for the city or staff in regards to the survey?
So I can just jump in if you want, Chuck, and give some thoughts as well. So we've had a chance to discuss it as a staff and are proposing internally questions that try to supplement the Department of Justice survey to get a little bit more of a sense of what our residents know or what our residents want to see in terms of the future of our department. Also, I'd also like to know what they're aware of in terms of reforms we've already implemented, because obviously we've done a lot of stuff over the past 9 months, and I'd like to know how effectively we've been communicating that. And also additionally, looking more specifically at the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how what sort of a job we're doing in terms of people's perceptions of that important issue. So I think that those are some of the areas we're likely going to enhance the Department of Justice survey. Our plan at this point is to prepare an RFP, which we've already just started, put that out hopefully in a couple of weeks. Obviously, it's a strange time to put an RFP out because Christmas and New Year's is a particularly bad time to ask for anything from anybody. So if we put it out there, we may have to extend it into January. Give the firms that we've mentioned an opportunity, plus we post it publicly for people, anyone who's interested. And then talk about the fact that whoever helps with the survey, we want them to help us, not necessarily just telling them the survey we want, but looking for their expertise and advice and making sure we get the right survey, the right representation of various groups and demographics in East Lansing. All of those issues, we want to make sure we get the right firm to partner with. So that'll be sort of like, once we select a firm, work with them to make sure we get the survey that we need out of that process. So we could envision bringing more back to the group to see sort of hopefully a more firm or final draft at some point. But certainly we are interested if the commission has suggestions on questions and things you'd like to know. We would certainly want to hear those. And we'll also plan to bring it back again, hopefully for another look by the commission.
Thank you for that report. Any reactions, questions, or comments in regards to the process, where they're at with the survey? Yes, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison.
I just wanted to make sure that the survey would also have an internal component. And I think I did hear you lead with that, but that was discussed last week. That's one of my concerns, is making sure that we're looking internally as well as externally of how the community views the East Lansing Police Department, but also how they view themselves within the department.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Of course, it'll be different questions, but I think that you had mentioned that, and the chief had talked about the opportunity to think about a perception survey from within the department. We're also obviously doing the survey. We're going to hopefully have results soon on the overall cultural assessment from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective of all of city government. So that survey has also been ongoing.
We actually started working on that today. The deputy chief and I kept looking at that and looking at how our some new software we're looking at we're using right now for our policies, and we're actually going to be able to upload an internal survey that's going to try and adjust get a snapshot of what our culture looks like internally also. So that's actually in the works. So we've been working on that since our last meeting.
Thank you, Chief Johnson and City Mayor. So just so so now we're talking about two different surveys then. You're talking about one to her point and then one that we were talking about originally, correct? The internal one.
The one I'm talking about is the overall community survey on perceptions of the police department. And then Ms. Ellsworth Etchison talked about, should you also be surveying the employees to get a sort of temperature of the department and gauge an assessment of the department. So I think both of those are in process.
Thank you. Did you want to weigh in, Commissioner Tyler? And then Commissioner Root, please.
I'm wondering if, to what extent MSU students are included in the sample?
Yeah, so when we've done our community surveys in the past, they have been stratified across age and demographics and where people live in the community. So all of those things have been a factor in making sure we're getting broad representation in our surveys. So that's something I'm going to want to hear from the survey companies, how they're going to ensure that they are getting a representative sample of our community. And in particular, how are they making sure that they are able to properly or significantly sample minority populations, because, you know, East Lansing does not have a very large Black community, I think of about 8.5 or 9%, but we want to make certain that that group in particular is a part of this survey in enough representation to make sure we get enough answers. Because obviously if we do a survey and it's all white majority people, that, and even grown-ups who are, let's say, older people who are my age, 50, 60, 70, maybe that's not the same survey you would get results for if you got 20-year-old college students and people of color. You know what I mean? You're getting a much different result potentially. So we want to get a full demographic, you know, across the board. What I can say is when we've done these in the past, the company we used was particularly good at making certain that they had that demographic breakout and that they kept sampling until they got the demographic mix that they needed. So that's something I'd want to hear, that you know, I don't want to get the survey back and have it not be representative of our population. So, because to me, that'd be a missed opportunity.
Thank you. Great question, Commissioner Root. Commissioner Tyler.
Yeah, so you spoke to having a survey go through a diversity, equity, inclusion lens. And I want to make sure I didn't miss that. How do you plan to do that?
Well, our own Elaine Hardy is a part of the committee, and actually she had talked about including some outside people actually from this committee to run that by as well. So perhaps Commissioner Haro from the research methods background, yourself from your diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective. So putting more eyes upon it as well after we get a draft.
Yeah. So one of the things I've looked into, so I actually know some contacts in Louisville, and after the Breonna Taylor situation, they implemented or had a community survey as well. So I'm planning on having that information shared with me, and I can share it with the group as well, so we can see a template and what they use.
Great. Yeah, we want to make sure we get this right. I mean, because once we get the survey back, I want to have asked the right questions up front, so we don't, at the end of it go, darn, I wish we would have asked this, or wish we would have asked that. I think when I go through the survey, if it's broken out, I mean, one of the great things about surveys, if it's done right, is you can do the cross tabulation and see all the different demographics, who perceived what, right? So if you look at a question like, what is your perceptions of fairness for the East Lansing Police Department and how they're policing? And you have people from different demographics giving different answers, that right there will be very telling information for you about people's perceptions. So I think there'll be a potential to have a lot of good information from this. So we just want to make sure we get it right the first time, because obviously, if we have a very good survey, I want to be able to repeat this survey over and over years to see if we can have some good data over time to see how things are working.
Thank you, City Manager. And it sounds like a wonderful resource, Commissioner Tyler, for us to kind of use and pull and pluck from as well. Any other comments, reactions, or thoughts? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item 3.2. Continue our complaint review process discussion that we had last week in regards to kind of the complaint process and what we do with that based on where we have so far. I'll open the floor up to any of the commissioners who would want to start the discussion. Don't be shy. So what do you want to do with the complaint process, I should say then, and how we discussed it last week. We had a couple different thoughts in how we view what a complaint process, what kind of powers or mandates that maybe the Oversight Commission can be, investigative powers, review, focuses, kind of really working along with the internal investigation, wait until after the internal investigation. What are your thoughts in regards to what we would probably be looking to make recommendations for? Commissioner Williams.
I've been wondering whether this decision that we are about to make is going to be dictated by money, because the amount of investigation that you do and how deeply you do the investigation depends on whether you have an investigator, and that depends on whether you have money to hire an investigator. So it seems to me that these decisions are going to be heavily influenced by the budget, and of course the budget heavily influenced by the economy. Are we going to have a investigative staff or not? If it's just going to be people, coming off their jobs at 6 o'clock in the evening to review files, they're not going to be able to even think about subpoenas or getting testimony from witnesses or third parties. So it's kind of a crucial issue to face. How much money is on the table?
Can I just jump in on that? I think that's one of the things when you look at the data we collected regarding different cities, is that unless you have a city that is very significant in size, you typically do not have dedicated investigators or dedicated staff, because the economies of scale just don't work. If we get a small couple of complaints per year, some of them being, someone was unprofessional or rude, having a staff person or something like that is just not practical. And that's why it's done. Usually internal investigations are done by somebody in our department who does other things as well. Just because of the workload, if you will. And it's also significant expertise that you need to be able to do those investigations.
Thank you, City Manager Lahanas.
I noticed that the cities that do this have, they hire lawyers who do investigations, and lawyers cost lots of money. So if we're not going to have somebody to do that, that kind of narrows the ability of what this review commission is going to be able to do.
Councilmember Bacon, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to Commissioner Williams' question, there is no to do. It's to make the recommendation that we can make a determination of what's feasible. It's not really a project in feasibility at this point. It's open-ended, looking to see what your recommendations are going to be, how you think it should look, and then we can make a determination. If it was something so egregious, maybe there's a provision for a special investigator around something that's really egregious and outside the scope of what can be handled internally. That's the kind of things that you'd be looking for if we're saying we can't seat an investigator, which sounds impractical for a small department. But if it's something was so egregious and outside the norm, that'd be something you write into the recommendation, that type of thing. That's more how you think about it versus scalability or feasibility at this point, because that'll be determined down the road of what's feasible. So at this moment, it's open. So
thank you, Councilmember Bacon. Anyone else? For me, I think about, the first version, and I think about really something that is going to, be kind of a compromise in between and getting something that's going to get approved with our recommendations, doing all this work, putting all this time in. It's really, really important for me personally to make sure that we have something that is going to be accepted, and I know when we start talking about some of these multi-layered issues with subpoenas, and investigative powers, and all that, it gets very, very difficult, I think, humbly, in regards to the end product and it being what we really foresee going forward. And so when I think about just this one portion of the complaint review process, I think about it as a review, as access to data, being able to have a place where data retention is available and accessible to this body, and being able to understand timelines, being able to understand trends, being able to understand, kind of really what can we do and recommend and suggest for policy recommendations to going forward. And so I don't really see it, as an investigative type entity, at least for now anyway, but I do just see it as someone, a body that is looking at complaints, going in and having access to case reports, having access to video. For example, these are examples, having that stuff be released in a timely manner. So these people have an opportunity to be able to represent and get off at 6 o'clock at night and have not a struggle in being able to understand the issues and represent the community in their prospective placements. So for me, that's how I look at it. And I really want to make sure that when we talk about the complaint process, you have to think about really just what we went through here about 6 or 7 months ago. And we had a process in play that wasn't perfect. And we want to improve upon that. And I want to think about, so when we have this oversight commission in place going forward, what could we do differently than we did previously to the situation that we were in before? And what tools do they need to have to be successful in being able to do that? I was talking to another commissioner, this complaint process and the perception that the community has of what an oversight committee does and doesn't do, the perception and understanding of what the police, public safety individuals have to do and what their job is and kind of how they have to enforce that. And I think, that is really kind of how I see this complaint process being something that's worthwhile, that really gets into multi-layered issues by being able to have two sides of education, access to information, and being able to come to a place where people can understand that process a lot better. And then also those people who are involved have great recommendations to improve these things going forward. So since no one was really talking tonight, you're gonna have to listen to my little stuff tonight. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I would love to hear any feedback or any additional thoughts in regards to this conversation. Yes, Commissioner Root and Commissioner Williams, and then Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison. 1, 2, 3.
A question to Eric Williams. If there were an investigator, at least for some, particularly serious complaints, are you making is there a decision linked to that about who makes the final decision? I mean, we have a system now where the decision is made by a supervisor of the officer who's involved. Would that still be the case if we had a professional investigator who's independent of the police department?
I don't know any place in the United States where the final decision isn't made by the police chief or the city.
I just thought
manager.
Clarifying that would be helpful.
And
is everybody on that wavelength that whatever procedure an oversight commission might get involved in investigating or reviewing or monitoring, that the ultimate decision about the status of the complaint and the discipline rests with a supervisor of the officer, which would, usually be the chief, and the only opportunity above that is the city manager?
So Chris, I'm processing that because while I do think that the final decision should rest with the chief of police, I'm still kind of struggling with, and I don't know what it looks like. I don't have the answer for it, of what it looks like when you have police policing the police. So police investigating the police. And so I'm not sure what that looks like. I don't have the answer to that, but that is kind of a challenge I have in my mind of biases that's going to be naturally brought to the table. And are they really going to be open-minded to what really took place? And so there's a culture across the United States, as we all know, that's not been perfect, where there has been that loss of trust. So when we think about like our purpose, right? When we go back to the document of what our purpose is for our work, it is one of the things that it is about rebuilding that trust, helping shape what that looks like, of rebuilding the trust between the East Lansing Police Department and the community. And that's going to be a big task. I understand that. And so whether there's a lot of complaints with the East Lansing Police or few, unfortunately, the East Lansing Police Department can get roped into the national flavor, right, of some of the bad actors and some of the other departments across the nation, some of the larger departments. And so that it's a heavy lifting. I don't know the answer to that, but I do have some concerns about how do you leave your biases at the door when the police are policing the police, investigating the police.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison. Did you want to respond to that, City Manager?
Yeah, I think that, you're all getting to the crux of the issue here. Chuck really touched upon it in his statement about sort of the powers of the group. So right now, it's the chief and the department investigating internal affairs, and it's the city manager and the city manager with the final say about personnel decisions. And then I work for a council, of course, inevitably. But the point here is to have a citizen group that is not beholden to anybody, but appointed to have that oversight, and they can look at the information, have experience looking at the information, look at the reports, look at the data, look at the videos, and then be able to offer a sort of public opinion on things. And that has a lot of power, actually, because You don't want to have a group, if you're the city manager and the police chief, who is saying, look at this, you did it wrong. Look at this, you did not do this properly. This was not what should have happened here. So I think that there's actually, a good deal of oversight and transparency that can come from that process in and of itself. And that's what the Ann Arbor model is, essentially, is a review of what happened. And do they think it was done properly? Should it be looked at? Was there something that was not done properly or handled properly? So that does have a lot of power and authority, I think, in its own way.
Thank you, Commissioner Lahanas. I think we're getting back to the original people who asked questions. I think it was next was Commissioner Williams, who had a question initially or wanted to make a statement. Is that true?
I was going to respond to something that somebody had said earlier, and now I've forgotten what that was. I would only say that I believe with Kelly that there's a lot of bias or conflict of interest when the police are policing themselves. I think our only hope is to one of these days have the state government do it. But since that's not going to happen anytime soon, we're kind of stuck with the police, the local police policing themselves, which is what makes me very despondent about the likelihood that we are going to improve, wield much power by setting up a civilian oversight committee that is merely advisory to the police chief or the city manager. My only hope is that there are other levers that a commission might be able to pull that would help the situation, help bring more police accountability to the situation than we have outside the discipline process.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. And I know there was a third commissioner who had a response or question. I can't remember who it was. I want to say Commissioner Tyler or Vice Chair Williams, I think. Did you guys raise your hand earlier? Did I miss
No,
anyone?
it was me, but I've already put mine in.
Thank you. Any more discussion in regards to what we've been talking about so far? Yes, Councilman Bacon.
Just for the record, at this point, just to get everyone's mind wrapped around this, at this point, none of this is academic. If you feel there's a step edit or places where you want the commission to be able to interject, ways you want them to be able to interject, that type of thing, this is that time. I don't want us to lose focus and consider this as an academic exercise on what could be and what can't be. Let's come back with how we want it to be, and then we'll see what's feasible, what the feasibility is on the back end, and what's acceptable to the contract and everything else on the back end. I don't want us getting wrapped around, what we feel and what we think is feasible. It's just, this is an exercise in what we want and the powers you want for the seated commission. And just anytime we're trying to get to that, let's refocus back on the mission of what we're actually here to achieve for the seated commission. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman Bacon. Commissioner Rowe.
Well, to respond to Kelly and a little bit of what Eric was saying, Eric made a point that our goals may be, we may have long-term goals like licensing by the state that really has some power behind it that we aren't able to accomplish right now. And yet that's really what we think will help. And then responding to Kelly, when I suggested, are we all coming from the point of view that it's going to be a supervisor of the officer that's making the decision, I was not meaning to say, I think that's the best idea out there. I wasn't coming at it saying this is the ideal. And I don't think that's what, I don't think our recommendations are about ideals. I think our recommendations are about what we can do with the constraints that we are facing now. And we can keep, you know, a long-term perspective in other ways in the community. But in terms of a recommendation to council now, I think it's important to understand the legal and collective bargaining situation that we're in. Otherwise, I would not have ever suggested that we might all be on the same page. You know, I think the environment creates, you know, the page that we're on right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Root. Commissioner Harrell. Oh, I thought you raised your hand. I apologize. Thank you for that clarification. And, you know, and as I was saying before, you know, I really agree really with trying to be in a situation where we're making this recommendation and it's something that's applicable, something that's realistic, something we can have in play that starts the process of improving the process. And ultimately, we would love to have it be, you know, this gem at the end of the tunnel and everything like that. But for me, I really, really would like to understand this complaint process, just to hammer a point home, is being able to have a transparent, cooperative process that is supported through their powers that be to be able to make recommendations based off the information that is provided, based off the history and the trends that are there. So the things that we have going for tomorrow are improved in the complaint process alone. And it's a great opportunity to really, you know, because one of the things I struggle with is when we have an oversight commission, and what I've seen around the country is a lot of these municipalities create these oversights, create these bodies, have these people appointed, and they end up being a part of the same system that the people don't have trust in because of the lack there of them being able to explain and educate the community about what the facts are, why the facts are they are, and then how can we improve upon these facts with the community's input. And I think sometimes with this whole complaint thing that, you know, there's going to be the solution, end all be all at the end of the tunnel, that we're going to have this great product that addresses everything. And oversight is not there to address everything. It's only there, in my humble opinion, to improve upon and build off of, and it evolves as we go along. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
A question about your vision. Does your vision, are you saying that you would like to see a committee that was empowered to look at patterns of complaints, look at policies and practices in the police department and critique those and offer recommendations with respect to those things? Or are you talking about individual disciplinary actions involving individual police officers?
The first of the two, if you're asking me, you know, I'm looking at it broadly, and I'm thinking about, you know, a system that's been in place for a long period of time that is enhanced through these labor contract things and all these different things that enforce it to be very, very strong and not evolving and not understanding, I think, of how things are now perceived by the community's perspective. And so I'm talking about really this body being able to start bridging that gap in that miscommunication, start building that trust within what is in place that we can't do anything about when it comes to some of these different things that are protected when it comes to the reality of unions and all the different things. Hopefully that answers your question.
Right. So I misunderstood what you were wanted us to discuss, because I thought you were talking, when you said the complaint process, I thought you were talking about complaints by the public, members of the public, against individual officers. Your concern is larger than that. And if that's what your concern is, I share it.
Okay. I'm a big picture guy. You got to bring me down to the details sometimes, but yes, I'm talking about the bigger picture of that. Yes, that's correct.
I think there are many things we can do without getting in trouble with the union contract or the union, that we could have an impact on police policies and practices and so forth. I'm despondent about whether we can have an impact on the disciplinary process involving individual officers and their employee rights. But I think there are other things we can do that could affect that could police the police.
Yeah, and I've seen it. I've seen versions of oversights that try to get into the discipline business. And yeah, to me, there's two different things. And this, I know it's simple, but there's discipline and there's accountability. And I'm really focused on more of the accountability, with the early warning systems and being able to see different things and catch things. I'm worried about looking at annual reports and looking at the history and see if things are improving or getting worse. So I'm more about that accountability in a way that doesn't have the disciplinary action when it comes to the actual powers of the oversight. If that helps a little bit.
Now, I imagine that the people that sent us here and created this resolution and expect us to produce a product, those people probably want us to do something about reviewing individual police officers' complaints. Complaints against individual police. I suspect it's not. I don't think that's a useful way to go. But I think that it's politically. That's what we're expected to do. At least one of the things that should come out of our study committee would be, what do you do about what's the role of this commission with respect to public complaints against individual officers? But I
agree with you 100%. And I think that I was trying to explain that a little bit about part of the job when it comes to dealing with that particular issue is being able to have these individuals be able to educate the community about kind of really what actually they can do and can't do. A lot of times, for example, when you have a complaint and you have all these different things, you have all these mechanisms in place, people don't understand really like who's doing what and why a lot of times. And it goes beyond sometimes just the actual complaint. It's about the process. It's about how people are feeling misled or not transparent, and people get angry about these issues. And I think when you talk about that individual point, exactly that, that's part of what this is in the complaint review process, is making sure that they have the expertise and understanding to be able to explain that and bridge that gap to improve upon people understanding why this complaint was done, why this individual officer went down this path, and these are the things that happen here, and this is why, and this is the situation that he's in or she's in when it comes to the outcome. I don't mean to dominate the conversation, but he's asking me questions. Anyone else want to weigh in on the discussion so far that we have here? I think it's a good discussion. Yes, Commissioner Root.
I think this is a very interesting conversation that's helpful. I also hope that the Oversight Commission will be able to have an impact on some bigger picture issues. I would be extraordinarily disappointed if we come out with a recommendation that says we are going to review complaints and be able to make recommendations about changes or, our thoughts about how well they were investigated, and then go home. And, all we were doing is looking at complaints. That was the resolution last year, the ordinance that was considered last year or brought forward. I'd be ready to go home now if I thought that's where we were going to end up. However, I'm not sure you get to the big picture without part of what you do being going through the individual complaints. That's not the only way that you get to a big picture at all. But I keep asking myself, if the Oversight Commission existed in February of this year, when the Gacito issue, Gacito arrest came up, and his injured face was on Facebook. He didn't actually make a complaint. This was an oddity about the situation. He didn't technically fill out a complaint form. The police department did that so that they could investigate it. He obviously complained by his statement on Facebook. So if the Oversight Commission existed then, what would the community want that group to do? If 30 people were angry and upset And it just so happened the Oversight Commission was having a meeting that Tuesday, and they showed up and they said, what are you going to do to help understand what happened here? And, you know, weigh in on what happened. And we have some things we want you to say and things we want you to find out. If the Oversight Commission said, well, we don't have an agenda of looking at individual complaints, I think that would really not work. And another thing is, if we think about last February, I learned a lot from that individual situation. And then I learned even more when I learned about the situation in December with Mr. Loggins, which was the same use of force. So it's not that complaints, looking at individual complaints is everything. It's not that looking at individual complaints is the only way to learn things for a bigger picture approach. But I think we do learn things from individual complaints. And I think we don't have much power about how individual complaints are resolved, but individual complaints are a learning opportunity that we can't avoid. That's kind of where I am at this point. If you look at what's the purpose of looking at individual complaints, it's not because we're going to make the community more satisfied about what happens with those individual complaints, because that's probably not going to happen, because the only way they'd be satisfied probably is if the complaint was sustained. That's why people complain. But if we don't take it, if we don't look at it and learn from it and use it for bigger picture recommendations, then I think we're failing the community.
Thank you, Commissioner Root.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Lahanas.
I think it's got to be both parts of that, and I think we fully expect that both parts of that, the looking at policies and operations and things prospectively and proactively, and also looking and making recommendations for improvement, and also having a role in the complaint process. I think both of those are critical to this, and that's what you saw, I think, in most of the examples that we provided of what other communities have. I think that's a part of the process, is that people will have some role in the review of complaints, whatever that may be, because that's going to be part of what gives the public confidence, is that it's not just the police looking at things. There's a body of independent citizens of their fellow residents that are appointed to look at this information. So yes, I think it's absolutely a part of it. How exactly that works and looks, the timing of it, what information, a subcommittee, public, private, all that is the details that need to be worked out. But I think both of those components are key components to this.
Thank you, City Manager. Yes, Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, I totally agree along those lines that it has police in front of it, but it's also kind of 360 what you guys are describing. They're doing an internal evaluation or survey. We're doing a public survey, and they don't match the perception of what it is. It'd be like, here's some areas of improvement, and here's some guidance, and here's some, it's not just like kick the police's ass all over the place. It's like actually try to affect culture, try to do the whole, it's the whole shebang. That's why it's important. It's got police in front of it, and we're wondering if there'll be more complaints or more interaction. The fact the word police is in front of it, it's different than a lot of other commissions when people don't know what they do. There's police, the word police in front of it. As soon as you put that on there, people are going to know where to come when these issues and when these public things arise. It's different with the HRC or with the whoever else they want to complain to that's not necessarily dedicated to these types of interactions or complaints. Or this is a dedicated commission to this, so it is designed to do what it's designed to do, and that is what you design it to do at this point. It is a very heavy lift. It's a big thing, because people are going to assume, so any powers you want to assign to this or ask for or work around the union, the contract or whatever, what's to see what's applicable and what works. I think that's what it is, because community's assuming with the word police in front of it that you have some powers of some type. And I think that's what you have to wrestle with here.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon. I'd like to ask, and I hate to put you on the spot, but just if you can, Chief Johnson and or both Deputy Chief Gonzalez, when you think about this soon-to-be Oversight Committee, and you have your process that you both have talked about is going to be improving on, and you're working on things, you're making this commitment here, being on this discussion and whatnot. You know, how do you see the Oversight Commission helping, enhancing with what you do? How do you view it personally, and how do you feel like you could use it for a force that is, you know, that shows a little bit of accountability or transparency or any of those things when you think about what we're going to be recommending? If you could answer possibly.
Commissioner, I actually appreciate that question. Wasn't expecting that tonight, but it's actually a valid question because it's something that we're going to live with. And I look at it, I just come in here the last 2 months, I look at it as an opportunity to learn and actually opportunity to grow. And I've worked with some people from the UN, a couple of individuals from the HRC Commission, and open up dialogue has educated myself and the police department over the last couple of months. And I've envisioning this review board or oversight committee or the standing commission that becomes a part of the police department in a sense that, like the council member talked about, which is a 360 type of evaluation, that we can't know all. And we're looking at things from our particular lenses, our particular experiences and things of that nature. And we have other people from the outside or people who have a different view on things and maybe can see things from a different standpoint can only help us be a better department and to serve our community. So whatever this oversight committee comes up with, we will work within that. We will work within what you guys would charge the commission to do. But we look at it as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to try and get this transparency thing and trust thing under control. I had some discussions with some union people today, and some of them don't even trust their own police department sometimes. And it's sometimes a little frustrating when the, you know, with the union and non-union employees, we're all cops, but there's the union against and the non-union people, they look at it sometimes a little differently also. And trying to build that trust up is not going to be an easy thing. And so having some fresh eyes and having some civilians who are committed to making us a better department can't hurt. And I think that the trust levels, I think you mentioned earlier, is a critical piece for us. And so if we can get that trust going, and the police department understands what the role is, the board or oversight board is, and this education piece that you mentioned a couple of times, Commissioner, I think it could be a win-win for the whole community, from my standpoint.
Thank you. I really appreciate the answer. And I know Deputy Chief Gonzalez, you know, people were bringing up the case that we had here 6-7 months ago, the 2 cases. And I know that, again, you know, it wasn't a perfect process. And, you know, when you think about possibly, and I know sometimes officers don't like scenarios like, you know, make believe, but, you know, when you think about kind of that process that we had previous and, you know, imagine having possibly oversight then and there, do you see ways within that previous circumstance how the commission would have been helpful towards you when Chief Gonzalez talks about talks about education? Sorry about that.
Yeah, kind of thinking, back to the past and how, the whole situation rolled out. One of the things that I think there's room for growth and some opportunity is how we communicate early and often with our community on sensitive issues, high profile issues like that, like the one that occurred in February. Chair, when we met back in the summer with the city manager and a couple of your colleagues, one of the things I talked about is there an opportunity to build in almost a critical incident protocol. So it gives us a checklist, if you will, of how we are going to communicate and what we are going to communicate to our community in a timely manner for those critical incidents. And so, when I think about this oversight commission eventually standing up, I think that there is definitely an opportunity to hear from a different perspective of what the community expects to hear, how they expect to hear it, and when they expect to hear it for some of these high-profile incidents. And I think that's, we're looking at two sides. We're looking at that high-level picture, and then, of course, at individual incidents. But I think that might be a bridge between the two of directing or making suggestions on policy, but also making a suggestion on policy that's going to directly impact a specific incident if it ever occurs again. So hopefully that gets to your question, but that's, one of the pieces of the puzzle of what I see occurring, somewhere in the future, in the near future here with this.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I appreciate the responses from both of you, because at the end of the day, we can't do this without you. And I know if you don't see value in it, or you see it as something where I think Councilmember Bacon talked about as far as trying to beat you up or whatever the case may be. I really want to make sure that we understand what you need as well when it comes to doing what you do best and keeping yourselves safe when it comes to some of the different things that you have to do within policing. So and I know when I initially met with Chief Johnson in the community interview process, I was really excited about a lot of these community initiatives that he was a part of and that he's probably already implementing and working on with you and everything like that. And I think, those are the types of things that, including this oversight, are going to be very, very valuable to us being able to get to a certain point that we all can live with. Yes, City Manager Lahanas.
I just want to mention, and add into my own perspective on this question. I think it'd be very useful to have a committee of this up and running, because, if this committee is done properly and has the right people, they should be independent and build sort of an integrity in the process. And that means, it doesn't mean the police are always wrong. It doesn't mean the police are always right. It means we look at it and then we make an honest assessment of what we saw that happened. And hopefully that entire process of having it in place will build a calming aspect to any problems that you have in the future, because people are aware that there will be a review process that is independent from the department. So when this question comes up that this is just the police policing themselves, we'll say, no, we have an independent law enforcement oversight commission that will do an eventual review concurrently at the end, whatever the process will be. And hopefully, if that process has integrity, people will have confidence that, oh yes, this commission of 9 members of our fellow residents are going to be looking into this and they're going to be offering an opinion on it. And hopefully, like I said, in order to be fair, it can't be that the police are always right and the police are always wrong. It has to just be, we look at the situation and then we offer an objective and fair assessment of what we saw. And hopefully that has integrity for both sides. The police feel that they get a fair shake, but also the people who are complaining get a fair shake as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
If we're talking about the process, and let me get more specific on this. 2 questions arise. How much information? Let's suppose we're advisory to the city manager, like the original ordinance set up. The police department makes a decision. That decision goes to the review board. What information does the review board, and let us assume that these are just civilians without an investigator, all their information is going to come from the police department. What information does the review board get from the police department? How deep into the evidence does the review commission get? And what information is the commission going to release to the public? Is the commission going to get confidential information, personnel information from the police department? If so, is it going to share that information with the public? So if if you have no investigator, if you have no independent sources of information, if all your information comes from the police department, which I would think is rather unsatisfactory, but that's what we have to live with. How much information is the police department going to give us with respect to each complaint? And we make a recommendation to the chief or the city manager. And then people from the public query us or query them. I'm not going to be part of this. Query them about what, why did you make the decision, the recommendation that you did? And so the commission will explain to the public, educate the public, what was the situation and how much information will the commission be allowed to share with the public. So we have an information flow question as we start to work out the nuts and bolts of what this review commission is going to be doing.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Do you want to respond to that, the city manager? You're muted.
Yeah, I certainly would. So I think that those are the details that this group has to make recommendations on. And those are tough questions because they have contractual issues. They have different issues of privacy and due process for the officer. So there's lots of issues there within all of those things you mentioned. And that's why when we look at other policies that have already addressed this, like whether it's Ann Arbor or Muskegon or all these other cities, they've already tackled with the issues you're talking about, and they've had to wrestle with that. And what did they come up with? So we look back at those and begin to make decisions on what's going to promote a fair process. So yes, that all has to be decided. What will be released? What will the final report look like? Will it be a subcommittee so that they can look more deeply at stuff that's confidential? You say that that they're only getting what the department gives, but there are official reports, there are videos, and there are official reports that they can look at and say, this is the police report, this is the use of force report, this is the video of what happened. So I think if they're getting the information, that's the information they're going to have in their hands, a lot of information potentially. How exactly that happens in an open meeting, is it a closed meeting with a subcommittee? All that has to be looked at by this group. And that's where the rubber hits the road on with this group's recommendation.
Thank you.
So there are different models out there of information flows. I would say that Ann Arbor is on one end of the spectrum, and say Berkeley, California would be on another end of the spectrum in terms of what information is considered privileged that the commission wouldn't have access to. It's kind of a judgment call, or what's political, as Mr. Bacon says, what's feasible. So we can ask for a lot, we can ask for a little. The more you get, the more you need expertise in order to evaluate what you've gotten.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Yes, Councilman Bacon.
I think that links up with Deputy Chief Gonzalez, kind of like a critical action plan, what to happen when the events happen and what information can be released legally, et cetera, right in that moment in time, what should come through the commission at that time, press release, yada, yada, and all that. I think that's all part of the lift here, kind of for his explanation as well, to build that community trust so it comes out faster. If it's didacted or whatever it has to be at that point to protect everyone who at that point who remains innocent at that point. And that's what's coming out, but it's just a standard for what happens when these crises or even pre-crises are bubbling up. This is what we're going to do. This is the role of the commission. This is the role of the chief and deputy chief on disseminating information. And this is what that's kind of what's been danced around, linking those two pieces together. So.
Thank you, Councilman Bacon. And I really think we're at a great point, of making the point of this discussion. And I really appreciate everyone who weighed in on that, because it's very important for us to get a feel for kind of where everyone's at and why, and appreciate staff also giving us that input as well. Any final thoughts before we move on from this discussion? Yes, Commissioner Root.
didn't know I was going to be claiming the final thought, but couple of things. One that are all very closely related. One is the Albuquerque evaluation that the subcommittee number 1 found, of which Sam Walker is one of the authors. He pointed out there are 5 different functions of citizen oversight: independent investigations, policy review, public information, early warning system, which is, internal accountability within the department, and community outreach. And he talked about this report talks about the advantages and disadvantages of those 5. And looking at the investigations, there are advantages and disadvantages. Almost all the others, he says, there are only advantages. There really aren't disadvantages. And I'm bringing that up now because when Chief Johnson and Deputy Chief Gonzalez spoke, they talked about transparency and sharing information better, having better plans about when and what to share. And it seems to me, I really don't, maybe I'll be convinced, but I will be surprised if we propose something where people will believe that the police are no longer policing the police in East Lansing because of this new Oversight Commission. I don't think the Oversight Commission is going to have that much power. However, if we're trying to improve trust, another way to improve trust, as this Albuquerque report points out, is to expand the amount of information that people have, that they believe, that they get in a timely way, that they feel that they at least have knowledge about what's going on. And I think that addresses both how individual complaints are handled and a broader picture of flow of information about, we were talking about big picture versus individual complaints. I think it will be a point of success if our recommendations include improving information that is timely and also information over time, so that it helps people to actually understand and analyze what's going on in our community about policing. I think we've started actually a discussion. We've had a very good discussion about complaint issues, but we're also kind of introducing some bigger picture, other additional tasks for the Oversight Commission, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely critical. Thank you, Commissioner Root. And you just made my point that I said it way earlier back then, but not as eloquently as you did with the facts.
Coming back to it, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm with that all. I mean, that's from my personal perspective and experience. When you have these high profile situations, it's a great opportunity to educate everyone involved. And just like Commissioner Root was involved, I learned so much. I learned kind of what you do more intimately as far as public safety. I learned more about the issues and the history of what the community was talking about. And even though that process wasn't perfect for many reasons, it was a great learning opportunity for people to get involved, to get to where we're at now. And I think this is what I think the heart of the oversight is. I know Commissioner Root had the final word, but I just had to cherry top that. But that's kind of where I'm at. And I think I'll leave it there because I can go on and on about that. But we'll go ahead and move on if everyone's comfortable with that, with the discussion. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. That was very valuable. That'll be some great stuff for us to kind of have later as we are drafting and writing and coming back to and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, we'll move to item number 4, new business. We got item 4.1 here and discussion of future speakers, city attorney, labor attorney. And we have a couple of motions that were premeditatedly sent in to us, if that's the right way to use that police terminology. Yeah, we have a motion that was submitted by Commissioner Williams. I'm not quite sure if everyone got a chance to see that, but I'll definitely just go ahead and read it because it's very short, so you understand where this motion is and see if it's something that you guys want to entertain. I think it's already entertained. So you want to have second to have discussion on it, if I understand how this process works. The study committee will hear, here's the motion, excuse me. The study committee will hear testimony from Robert Sheehan, Community Mental Health Association of Michigan, on the use of mobile mental health response teams in the place of armed police officers in response to some calls. And that is the motion at hand. Is there anyone that wants to second the motion that's on the table? So we can have discussion on it. You're muted, Commissioner Root.
Was it moved?
I assumed it was moved because he submitted it. So yes, so just for official processes, it is moved by Commissioner Williams, seconded by
I'm happy to second it.
Commissioner Roof, so we can have discussion on that. Again, the motion on the table is the study committee will hear testimony from Robert Sheehan, Community Mental Health Association of Michigan, on the use of mobile mental health response teams in the place of armed police officers in response to some calls. And in the motion that he's written, he's got some reference points and things like that. Commissioner Williams, did you want to weigh in a little bit more to the committee in regards to why this motion is important to you that you have moved?
Well, this is the first of 3 motions that I submitted, and as we've had our discussion about the complaint process, the discipline process, this is an area that I think a review commission or an oversight commission could concern itself with, that doesn't have to do with the discipline of individual police officers. So this is part of the larger environment of police work that I hope the Oversight Commission will would think about and perhaps involve itself in. I'm not proposing with this that we do anything. I don't have a concrete proposal. All I'd like to do is listen to the man talk about what these mobile mental health teams are, and let us learn what he's got to teach us.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Is there any more discussion in regards to having Robert Sheehan come in and speak with our group in regards to the motion on the floor about mental health response teams? Commissioner Harrell.
So in general, I'm all for learning more. I think it might be useful to hear from City Manager Lahanas about whether any of these conversations have already taken place, given that we've recently put 2 social workers in with the East Lansing Police Department. I'm just concerned about sort of replicating efforts here, that if this is something that has already been addressed by those 2 social workers being put into place, that this perhaps might be time better spent listening to a different speaker.
We have not had a conversation with the Community Mental Health Association about this. Some of this was drawn from research, from our own research in sort of the literature of what's going on around the country. And some of it was from my own basis as a public mental health administrator from 2 decades ago, working in the community mental health system, and the benefit and usefulness of crisis management and social workers in police work. So that's where that came from, but not specifically from a conversation with community mental health.
So just for simple terms, so you're saying right now, based on the motion that's on the floor, City Manager Lahanas, having someone like Mr. Sheehan come in and speak with us would not be a duplicate.
I don't think it's duplicative, but I'm not the commission, so it's up to you what you want to hear more about. It would even, I would actually find it quite interesting, but it's a matter of your time and what you need to make decisions, not what I need. So I don't think it's duplicative, but it's up to you.
Yeah, and I was just talking about kind of really what you have in play with the social work and all the different things, the social workers you've hired. I didn't know if there was something concrete in place. Yes, Chief Johnson.
Our social workers started 2 weeks ago, And it's a brand new program, and we are in the middle of getting everything squared away, trying to identify what causes the service are going to be going on. We got some referrals already, dealing with some of the issues that the non-police calls that we have already been sending our social workers on. They've been extremely effective, and even they'll talk about this trusting again. Our officers are trying to get used to social workers, helping them do our job, do their police jobs a little bit better too. So the 2 weeks, we don't have a lot of information right now, but we are already seeing some value in some of the calls for service. We had a case this weekend that they provided a great service to one of our victims that was involved in a crime. And so that's just my input on our current social worker situation right now. It's effective, but we can always learn more too.
Thank you, Chief Johnson. Is there any more discussion in regards to the motion? Mr. Sheehan coming in and speaking with us. All right, so I think we should probably, Diane, probably do a roll call vote just to kind of make sure that we have our numbers and people identified about what they want to do or not want to do. If you don't mind, please, in regards to the motion of having Robert Sheehan come in from Community Health Association Michigan and talk with us about the mobile health response teams in the place of armed police officers in the response to some calls. Did you, before we get to that vote, did you want to weigh in a little bit more on the discussion, Commissioner Root?
I listened to the Human Rights Commission meeting the last time it met. And I gather that they're going to be talking about this issue also. And I wonder if there's a way to bring that together somehow. Is there a way that the HRC and the study committee can hear from Mr. Sheehan?
I can't really speak for the group. Maybe Dr. Heyer would have a better feel for, but I was already thinking if this was something that was not going to happen here, I was going to see if we were going to be able to look at that possibly on our side in the HRC, but that would be discussion I would have to have with Dr. Taylor and the rest of the members to see if that's something that, since we are, so what Commissioner Root is talking about is we have been tasked and taken it on maybe working with the city in regards to the new social workers that have been in play that Chief Johnson has talked about and offering recommendations to possibly this group or the police staff in regards to kind of how they're implemented. And that's a rough play on that definition of what that's about, but that's where that's coming from. Does that cover it, Commissioner Tyler, roughly about kind of really what we have going on with the social worker and what you know about that? Yeah. So, so that's kind of how I was looking at it, just from our HRC response to your question, Commissioner Root. Did you have any other questions or follow up with that?
I think it's really important to hear from him. I would really like to hear from him. I'm not sure exactly the best way. So it's difficult, when the question is yes or no, exactly what to say. That's where I'm finding myself.
Yeah, tough one. So we do have the motion on the floor. We do have discussion, I think, has been completed. And now we are at the vote of our particular motion here. Diane, if you will, please, can you go ahead?
Okay, so I'm just going to say each name and they will vote yay or nay. Is that how we're doing this? Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. Sade Callwood.
Was that a yay or nay?
That was a yay.
Thank you. Kelly Ellsworth Etchison.
Yay.
Chuck Grigsby.
Yes.
Cedric Haro.
Yay.
Chris Root.
Yay.
Quentin Tyler.
Yay.
Eric Williams.
Yes.
Tanya Williams.
Yay.
Okay, and then Ron doesn't get a vote, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the whole group said yay.
Thank you. So the motion passes, and I'll probably talk with City Manager Lahanas about timelines and kind of see what we can come up with, and
Correct.
also talk with Commissioner Williams, and we'll get that all figured out. And hopefully we can get that person in and speak with us in the near future. Is that okay with you, City Manager?
Correct. Yep. We've already made the outreach. We played phone tag, so he's expecting a call for January, I think. So we'll make that happen.
All right. All right. I'll move on to the second motion within item 4.1 submitted by Commissioner Williams. And I'll just go ahead and read it because it's very brief. The study committee will hear testimony from a representative of the Michigan Municipal League Risk Management Program regarding the role that the program plays in police oversight. We had a little bit of discussion of this in the last meeting on this motion here. And I'm looking to see if anyone wants to second Commissioner Williams's motion for discussion.
Second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Root. She raised her hand first. Sorry about that, Commissioner Ellsworth Hutchinson. And so let's talk about it. Let's talk about, did you want to maybe reassert Commissioner Williams kind of why this is important for the commission to consider?
Well, last meeting, we had a discussion from Ms. Federwood, the insurance procurer for the city, and she talked about the way the city buys insurance and so forth, and we talked about the claim history. When I was looking at the Michigan Municipal League's website, and there's another one out there too, but East Lansing, I guess, is a member of the Municipal League. They have a program that they call risk management, where it's a voluntary program that they work with police departments on to share information about what practices police departments can undertake that tend to reduce the chances of people getting hurt and making insurance claims. They're concerned about, that kind of thing. So I thought that in the future, if this Oversight Commission wanted to get involved in things other than discipline of individual police officers, working with or knowing about what the Michigan Municipal League Risk Management Program does would be one of those things. It's one of those things to help the overall picture of police accountability.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams, for restating that. And we did have a discussion, I remember, and I may be a little confused, but based on the way that we're set up in our history here, am I correct in saying that a lot of the risks that we had were related to like traffic incidences and issues pertaining to stuff that wasn't like really like a police oversight focus, at least with how it's been for the last 10 years? Is that correct, City Manager, or no? Am I confused?
Yeah, that's been our experience. The other thing I would just mention is that I'm not certain 100% if the MML will come and speak to us. I would certainly invite them, but they're an insurance company as well. They have the MML risk pool, and we have bid with them and never selected them. I'm sure they're a fine risk pool. We just have selected another provider for all of our general liability issues. So I'm happy to put the invitation out there, but we're not a customer of theirs. We're a customer of the association. We're not a customer from a general liability perspective, an insurance perspective. So perhaps we can invite our own insurance carrier or invite them. I just want to put that out there because they may say, you're not a customer, invite your own insurance company. But I don't know that answer.
Thank you.
And there were no claims except primarily relating to automobile accidents across the city. So not just police, but fire, public works, and others. And then water main, sewer backups are another common liability issue the city has.
Thank you, City Manager. For me, I'm not quite sure if using our allotted time for this particular thing. You know, I think there's more ways we can get, or different ways we can get this information via written communication or, you know, some other vehicle in regards to understanding kind of what they offer, what some of the things that we could be concerned about. But you know, I don't know, and I would like to hear from anyone else if they had any strong feelings about this discussion as far as this vote or a motion that we have on the floor, seeing the value in being able to have you know, these people come in, particularly with talking with us about some of those risk management issues.
I'm picking up that people aren't terribly interested in this motion.
Well, I mean, it's just one of those things. I think it's not that, and I'm not speaking for everyone else. I don't pretend to do that. I just think it's something that you know, we can get this information and maybe in a different, you know, way, or we can get a little bit of information and still apply to our end result of our report and recommendations about the focus and some of the different things that when we talk about policy and procedures and different things that the Oversight Commission will eventually have under their hat, not just the complaints and review process, but, you know, I think it has its place. I just don't know if where we're at right now that, you know, we could do very much with the information. But like I said, I don't know based on what little I do know right now, and based off really what City Manager Lahanas has talked about in regards with you know, compared to maybe another place, you know, and what we have as far as risk management about doing things differently, and really not really any strong claims or history of claims that pertain to this issue. I just don't know. So anyone else want to have comment on this before we move on with the vote for this motion to hear from the Michigan Municipal League's risk management program?
Well, rather than suffer the agony of defeat, I'd just as soon move on to motion number 3.
Okay, so do you want to withdraw your motion?
Sure.
So we're going to go ahead and withdraw motion number 2 that you submitted in regards to the municipal league, right? Correct?
Let's do that.
All right, withdrawn. All right, we'll move on to motion number 3 here. The study committee will hear testimony from the Ingham County prosecutor on police oversight and accountability regarding the use of Brady lists, charging decisions for low-level offenses such as resisting and obstructing, and other initiatives at the county level. And this motion, well, before I get started, is there a second to this motion 3 submitted by Commissioner Williams? Yes, seconded by Commissioner Harrell. And I would love to hear discussion. This is partially in response to some of what the caller was talking about that we had earlier, and maybe make an emphasis of why this is important. I'm sorry, Commissioner Williams, can you go ahead?
Again, this is another avenue of approach that an oversight committee would take, might possibly explore outside the disciplinary process involving individual police officers.
Is there any other discussion, points, questions, or matters regarding this motion? Hearing testimony from the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office or a representative? Yes, Commissioner Harrell.
So if I could just chime in from an academic and practical standpoint, right? When I was in graduate school a few decades ago, this was actually something that we worked on with Chief Alley at Lansing Police Department. And we sort of designed this as an attempt at an early warning system where we were effectively looking at officers who had an unusual number of resisting or obstructing or fleeing and eluding charges, particularly when those were the only charges being sought, right? And we looked at that from the standpoint of sort of an officer's inability to use effective command and control during an encounter, right? And so I think more recently that has morphed into this conversation, which is sort of the intuitive understanding of if you're going to charge somebody with resisting arrest and only that offense, why aren't you had to have been arresting them for something initially for them to be resisting that arrest, right? So why not charge them with that initial offense? So I just wanted to throw my support behind Councilmember Williams here in that I think this is something that is of vital importance, right? When it comes down to it, there is at the very least a perception that these are charges that are used to cover up for an officer's misconduct, right? That I've gotten myself involved in a situation because I could not effectively control the encounter and force was used. And so therefore I have to post hoc justify that force, right? And these are, excuse my language, these are effectively what everybody knows are chicken shit charges, right? They're charges that are just sort of thrown into the mix because this is now the nature of the beast, right? If we're going to get enhanced scrutiny for these sorts of things. So from the standpoint of the Oversight Committee, right, one of the things that we've been talking about is making use of as much data as possible to examine patterns, right? And so to go back to my initial comment, right, one of the things that we tried to do was look at, are these patterns of charges, are they geographic? Are there, for example, certain neighborhoods where regardless of the officer, regardless of the shift, regardless of the citizen in the encounter, people are more likely to run from the police, right? Because then we'll talk about what do we need to accomplish in those neighborhoods in terms of restoring that trust. But also looking at those patterns of, is this an individual officer who people continually run from or who continually has to charge people with resisting arrest? And is that an officer who needs some supplementary in-service training to correct some of those things before we get to a larger problem, right? The difficulty anytime that we start talking about the relationship between the prosecution and the police, right, is that there's obviously a tight relationship there and that a prosecutor's job does not get done without the cooperation of the police, right? So I think it would be interesting to hear from not just somebody from the prosecuting attorney's office about these sorts of things, Brady lists, right? Do not call lists. I will not put this officer on the stand because they have a history of making problematic statements. They have a history of sustained, whatever it is, right? But I think in that context, it would also be useful to hear from the department, what's the response if you find out that one of your officers is on the do not call list from the prosecuting attorney, excuse me.
Thank you, Commissioner Rowe. Always informative and great insight into your expertise. And I'm with you. I think it'd be very, just to second everything. I just think it'd be very great opportunity to learn a little bit, kind of really how this functions and how we can better, see how the prosecuting attorney's office or representative sees oversight and kind of really how we can improve the system, because there's obviously a perception at the least, that the prosecutor's office and the prosecutor and the police and kind of really the system that, protect each other is the perception from the community in some particular situations from some particular people from certain community demographics. So I'm with it. I don't think I need to say anything more about it. Does anyone else have any comments or discussion points in regards to the motion on the floor? All right, so I think it's safe, Diane, for us to go ahead and I'm gonna just call the vote and see if, it's pretty clear, which I think and assuming that will be. So all those in favor of hearing testimony from Eaton County prosecutor and or representative about police oversight and accountability regarding the use of Brady lists, charging decisions, low-level offenses, such as resisting, obstructing, and other initiatives in the county level, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion passes. All right. City Manager Lahanas, is there anything that we need to do to help support that for you, or reaching out or anything like that at this point?
Myself or the police administration will reach out and pass on the resolution and the language so they understand what perspective you want to hear, and we'll have them try to work with our scheduling to get them on the calendar for January.
I appreciate that. Are you pretty confident that they'll be willing to come in and give us their time and really talk with us? Are you pretty confident about that?
If it were my organization and someone invited us to go speak, we would go speak. I don't know what their perspective is on that. I would assume that someone's going to come from their office and speak to us, but I don't know that 100%. Maybe the chief or deputy chief can offer an insight on that because they work with them more than I do.
I believe they will come out. This Simon may not be able to come in, but someone from the office would be able to come in and speak. I'm pretty sure they would do that for us.
Thank you. And I just needed to ask it, because it's it's sensitive stuff, and so at the same time. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're all done with the motions. And with item 4.1, we'll move on to item 4.2, future community input meeting discussion. Yes, Commissioner Root.
In 4.1, it wasn't in a motion format, but there was also the issue of bringing in the city labor attorney. I wonder if there's any conversation about, what we think is best about timing on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Root. So let's discuss that real quick. Let's talk about the commission and what you guys think. We got a couple people in mind so far. We got on this item 4.1, as she said, city labor attorney and city attorney. Yes, City Manager Lahanas.
So these people both work for the city, so that will be easy to get them to come speak. So I could have the labor attorney on standby, and if we can't get the other two people for January, I can fill in either or of these people, perhaps labor attorney first, because labor may be more relevant. So because they're not really a guest, they're quasi-staff, so we can get them to come speak. So you can just let me know you want to hear from them, and we'll either have them in February, which is the next opportunity, or if one of these two don't come, I'll plug them in for you so you don't miss a beat with your meetings, if that's what you'd like.
Well, I certainly want to have an opportunity to hear from them. Do other people think it's important?
Absolutely, and I'm seeing a couple of head nods there, Commissioner Root. So I think it's fair to say that we can value, unless there's anyone who does not think we should spend time on that. Yeah, so we're good to go with that, City Manager, and we appreciate that. And it's nice to have that backup in there just in case someone's schedule doesn't align. We can still keep moving with our momentum and some of the different things we want to kind of get understood. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
Looking at that Ann Arbor ordinance and the restrictions that it places on their Oversight Commission, I would be interested in having them think about how could we write an ordinance that would maximize the amount of information that the Oversight Commission is able to get from the city.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, City Manager Hannes.
Yeah, we can certainly pose that question to them. I worry that some of that might just be the parameters we operate in, but I understand your question to sort of have them think about what are the upper limits of it. So.
Yep. Thank you. Did you have something you wanted to add in there, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison?
I just wanted to, just for clarity, with Commissioner Eric Williams, the question, when you say we write, are you saying that the actual seated commission, not our group, would write that? Is that correct? I just want to make sure for clarity. When you're talking about the ordinance?
Yes, I'm talking about the ordinance creating the Oversight Commission. If you look at Ann Arbor's, there are about 5 or 6 little things that they can't have, and I'm thinking that some of them might be superfluous excuses not to give out information, and if a lawyer would look at it and with the idea of writing an ordinance in such a way that it would maximize the amount of information the committee could get without, having to go to the Supreme Court to that might be useful, because I suspect that you can get more information out of a city than that Ann Arbor ordinance allows you to get.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Yeah, there was one I saw in there where if giving the information out puts the officer in danger, that's a reason not to do that. And that, that's not really, I think personally, a reason not to cooperate with that information. So there's things in there, I agree with you, Commissioner Williams, to make sure that we have a process that really works when it comes to that. We're going to move on if anyone else doesn't have anything else to add to this discussion here for the sake of time. So we got a little bit more work to do with Commissioner Tyler's information as well tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and move on unless someone has something final to say to that discussion. All right, we're going to move to item 4.2, future community input meeting discussion. What I mean by community input, I meant about public participation and really coming up with some discussion. And we probably won't make any strong decisions tonight, but it's there's a couple of layers there that are a little bit tricky about how we do it or how we have a format in a way that is not just public comment. As we all know, so far up to this point, our public comment has been very limited. We've heard from consistently one or two people in regards to what we're talking about. And I think there's a variety of reasons for that. But it really is important to me that if we're going to put energy into all this, that we have a product of something that really is going to give us some value with that. And just because there's that concern, I was reminded by our commissioner, just because there's that concern doesn't mean that we don't fight on this issue to get this participation. I just really probably am assuming that we're going to need help in regards to our community connectors, such as Elaine Hardy and some other people out here who have a lot of connections with community members who have been involved with some of these issues or feel these issues are important to really have some representation about as far as having some public input in our end product. But I'll go ahead and open it up to the commission. Yes, Commissioner Harrell.
Just wondering about, with respect to timing, are we hoping to have more of the final product done and then ask community input on that? Or are we trying to have community input earlier so that we can incorporate those into the final product?
Great question. And that's what I struggled with when we first started talking about this, is that we need to get to a certain point, because I think the lack thereof of input and communication from people is they don't really know what we're doing yet and where we're at and what we have going on. But I said that in the previous meeting, but I felt like I was alone in that thought. So I kind of backed up off of it. And I'm just going by, kind of what, everyone else wants to do. But I'm kind of with you with that concern. Yes, Commissioner Root.
I think Cedric's question is exactly the question on my mind too. I feel we have an obligation to try to get public input. And I also think that Chuck is, I agree with Chuck that if we have nothing to put on the table, that's not going to generate very many ideas, because it's our job to generate the ideas, I think, because it's new in our community. But we don't want it to be so late that we are pretty much, committed to issues we've really, really worked hard on. Do you have a thought, Cedric, about the sweet moment for it?
I think moving forward, I think we're due for a discussion of, and maybe this touches a little bit on what we're going to talk about next, but I think we're due for a discussion of putting together section 3 of the report, which is this, the variety of models. And then, if we can get to a point where we have enough in there and enough examples in there so that we have, let's say the 4 models and then advantages and disadvantages of each model. And these are some examples of cities that have put this sort of model into place. I think that would be an effective point for asking for community input. That's going to require, obviously, taking on the task of putting pen to paper for Section 3.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Root, and thank you for the response, Commissioner Rowe. Is there any more on this, or can we move on? Yes, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison.
When you asked about the timing for community input, I'm thinking probably in February, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that for the rest of the commission?
Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison, is that directed to Commissioner Harrell?
It's directed to any commissioner or all.
Yes, Commissioner Harrell.
February was exactly the timeline I was thinking about when we start talking about these upcoming speakers. Sort of, I had this hard deadline in mind of we probably don't want to get past the end of February without having had that public meeting.
Thank you. I agree with you in regards to somewhere around there. I think we'll be at a great spot with some of the different things, especially with all the speakers in January and the information we'll get and the learnings that we'll have through that. I think we'll be so much more stronger to have something that people could put their heads wrapped around when it comes to their input. Any other discussion going forward? And we'll definitely have this going forward. And so just because we're not doing anything with it today doesn't mean we're going to leave it there. It's just that we just wanted to have a brief discussion on that and kind of get a feel for what people were thinking. And I think I'll go ahead and move on if there's no other comments. I see you unmuted there, Commissioner Williams. Did you have a comment?
No.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 4.3, Study Committee Report, Draft Section 1, Commissioner Dr. Tyler. Thank you so much for doing your thing here. Can you go ahead and lay us up kind of really in regards to your draft and kind of really what we're looking at here? If you don't mind, please.
Sure. So first, Chuck, I do want to thank the other commissioners that worked to help me in revising this. So also Chris Root and Sade as well, provided support to me in this endeavor. But also what you see in front of you is Section 1 based on the framework presented a few weeks ago. In particular, it consists of a summary up to December of our work, research completed by the commission, either by the staff or commissioners, resources provided, the resolution and purpose of the group. And that's what we have.
Thank you. As well, thank you, Commissioner Root and Commissioner Callwood, for giving us this product here for us to have a discussion in regards to kind of really what we do with it and how we go forward. I'll open the floor up to any commissioners. Yes, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison, please.
Yeah, I thought the work that you guys put together so far was really good. I went through the document earlier today, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this, putting this together so far.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
It's an early Christmas present. I really appreciate it. I think the fact that we had 2 meetings in December, which is a stretch for all of us, and then getting this piece done just really makes me feel we are moving ahead. And the discussion we had today about the complaints and things related to that, I think we're really making excellent progress. Feels good. I think it's a good quality piece of work.
I'm learning so much from all the commissioners on this committee. I've just, my level has went up so many different times just being a part of some of the great work that we have, for example, right in front of us right now. And it definitely is appreciative from my standpoint. So what do we do to build on this? What's next in regards to this document and how we move on to possibly Section 2 or 3 or how we proceed? I would love to hear from someone. Yes, Commissioner Rue.
I think it's not too early to hear if there are folks who would like to do some drafting on the other 3 sections. We're obviously not ready to start drafting Section 4, which is our specific recommendations, because that has to be written when we've got more of a sense of the group. But even there, if somebody, has in mind that they're going to be a drafter, you listen and think and make notes differently, if that's coming up in the future. So I wonder if we could, and also doing this now means that folks who do have some time between now and mid-January, might make some progress on sections 2 and 3. So I think there are advantages to just seeing who might be interested. And if there's more than one person interested in drafting one of these sections, I think 2 people could work together pretty readily. More than that becomes big, but and everybody's going to get a chance to look into it. But I think if we could ask folks what they might be interested in drafting now, that would be great.
Thank you, Commissioner Root. And I'll go ahead and open it up to anyone, based off what we have here from Juan, drafting and looking at and working with possibly someone for sections 2 and 3.
And even 4, even though it's down the road.
It's a commitments. We do have a little bit of time in between next time we'll meet. I know we got a little bit of holiday stuff in there, but it's a great time to really not just come back in January and have a stop and go situation. I think it's, very, very important for us to keep on the grind. Our time is very, very short. Once January hits, April's going to be like right the next day. It feels like, with the amount of work and the scope of the things that we need to kind of really hammer down, especially with having the speakers come in and speak with us as well. So I highly recommend that we get somebody or 2 to possibly make a light commitment in doing that. Yes, Commissioner Rowe.
I just had a question for the group in terms of section 2. Sort of how retrospective are we thinking for history and current practices? We talking about like history in terms of the mid 80s through today, or we talking about the last 2 decades, the last decade? Anybody have any thoughts on how far back we want to go?
The report subgroup talked about starting in 2016 and incorporating all of the reporting to the HRC. If there is to be some history of a couple of decades, somebody would need to write that who knows that history. Do you think there is some important history there to be told that's earlier?
I mean, just in broad strokes, right? East Lansing has always had this sort of town versus gown issue, right? So I'm thinking more specifically about, the way that the ELPD and other agencies responded to some of the disturbances around, Final Fours and things like that. The Munfield riot, the Bogue Street riot, those types of things. So, that's 2000, 2001. Those aren't necessarily intimately tied into the types of individual instances that we're talking about in the context of this committee. But I think that speaks a little bit to potentially what some of the issues have been in terms of trust between some of the younger members of the community and the ELPD versus, and probably more transient student and some of the older, sort of permanent residents community of East Lansing. If people don't think that's relevant, that's I'm open to suggestions and opinions.
So am I. Any other thoughts or comments from anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Callwood.
Yeah, some of the things that Commissioner Root and I were also kind of going back and forth about is also how in depth we want to go. And I think that in some ways kind of goes to what Commissioner Hero was talking about. Whereas section 4 is like the most important thing here. I think we want to be mindful of how in depth we're also going in sections 2 and 3. Trying to keep it as relevant and directed as possible, I think would probably be best. That doesn't necessarily answer like what we include specifically around history per se, but I think just keeping in mind that we probably want to just be very, very short and direct and make sure that most of our efforts and elaboration is really in section 4 where we're making the recommendations.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Root.
In connection with Sade's point, we were thinking about it as a recent history of police oversight, not of policing in the city.
So
that would be the most relevant to how you would want to set up an oversight commission in a new, this new era.
I know we don't have any commitments yet, but are you saying that so 2016 is appropriate as far as going back? And I'm just asking because I'm not.
2016 was the court order. January 2017 was the first police report to the HRC. And also 2016, the ELPD organized a town hall that I see as part of this history at Hannah that had probably 100 folks there. That may not be exactly right, but I see that as part of that era. I think those decisions were being made kind of about how to be more public about sharing this information. I'm thinking that there's this fellow, Steve Gonzalez here, who knows that history. But does that seem like a sensible place to start?
So, yeah, and I think you're close. I thought the first time we came to the HRC was in 2016 with Chief Murphy, and then Chief Murphy again in 2017, and then moving on forward.
You may well be right.
And I think you're right on the town hall was in 2016. That was
October,
the fall of 2016 up at Hannah Center, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
So all those have to do with sharing with the public in a different way what's going on with complaints and racial bias issues and increasingly use of force too. But that's the flow that I think has an impact on where we go next.
Understood. Yeah, and I would agree.
Delighted to take a stab at drafting it, that section.
Thank you, Commissioner Rowe.
Did you say you would?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was going to say, I could raise my hand, but I don't know as much of the history, so I'd have to partner with someone that knows a bit more on the history.
Well, so. I'd be happy to share a draft with you to get your input. That would be great. Thank you.
Nice. So thank you, both of you commissioners. That's going to be a very, very important aspect of everything that we're doing, and how far we go back and where is going to be key. So we have section 2 draftee volunteers. Is there anyone who right now is comfortable entertaining any other sections, at least getting started on it, not really necessarily having a final product at this point in time, but just kind of really looking into some of those different things based off your experience, your strengths, and your knowledge when it comes to those sections? Yes, Commissioner Harrell.
Yeah, I can start taking a stab at section 3.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart. Is there anyone that would be interested in teaming up with Dr. Harrell, Commissioner Harrell, in regards to section 3? I know we're a couple of commissioners down right now, so I know we're a little bit light on our personnel, but I appreciate that, Commissioner Harrell, and hopefully we can get someone else as well, if we don't get anyone tonight, to jump in with you, just to kind of help you out, and maybe, support you at the very least. I'd offer my services, but again, that's not my strength, and I'm not quite sure. I might slow you down. So, but anyway, so
section 3 again?
Correct.
What is section 3 again?
I don't have. Do you have section 3 in front of you, Commissioner Root, or Commissioner Harrell, in regards to what you're responding to?
It's the various models of oversight commissions, difficulties of evaluation, constraints, trends.
Is that something you're interested in, Commissioner Williams, as far as working with Dr. Harrell by chance?
I could be a helper.
Okay,
Nice.
sounds good.
Nice. That's a beautiful thing. And dare we even talk about Section 4 at this moment right now, as far as any light commitments or interest? Yes, Commissioner Williams.
I'd like to be one of the people that does Section 4.
Stepping up, thank you. And then Commissioner Callwood is interested as well, based off her hand, if that wasn't a question. So I think you have a team member for Section 4 as well. I'm assuming that's what she raised her hand for. Am I wrong, Commissioner Callwood?
No, you're not wrong. I think Section 4, I mean, that once we get to that point in making the recommendations, I think we could all be a little bit clear about which parts of Section 4. I do not want to draft all of Section 4. I just want to make that clear.
Bless your heart as well. And thank you, Commissioners Williams, Callwood, Harrell, Root, and Ellsworth Etchison for your work when no one is looking. We appreciate you. All right. I think we're good with that discussion so far, unless anyone has any more comments or concerns in regards to our discussion we have right now on the table. All right. We're going to move to Section 5, Commissioner announcements. Did anyone have any announcements, questions, or statements to the commission? Yes, Commissioner Rowe.
Just wonder if we want to share ideas for how to shape discussion at our next meeting. It was helpful that we knew we were coming in today to talk about complaints. Do we want to keep going on that? Do we want to do that and another aspect?
So what do we have so far for January?
I think we have a blank slate.
And
two speakers, obviously, mental health first, and then the county prosecutor's office second. So
I think it's great if we can have some part of each meeting where we're talking about making progress on the work of the report and the recommendations.
No worries on that. I can certainly have that be prioritized. Yes, Commissioner Raw.
I was just curious, when is our first January meeting scheduled for?
11th.
January
11th? Thank you.
What was that date?
January 11th, Diane?
I'm unmuting. Hang on. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the next two meetings are January 11th and January 25th.
Thanks.
Well, that's quite some time from now. All right. Any other questions for any other commissioner announcements? I just had a quick question to staff, Deputy Chief Gonzalez and Chief Johnson. So the accreditation process, I know that takes quite some time and all that. I know you guys are looking into that, or have you started that process already?
The deputy chief put the application on my desk just this afternoon. So once I sign it tomorrow, we start that clock process. Once the MACP gets the application, which should be this week, and start that 2-year process that we're gonna have to be pretty diligent in getting that up and running. But the deputy chief and captain, that's one of the main priorities for 2021. So that's where we're at. So the application can be signed tomorrow, and we're gonna be moving forward. And we're looking at a 2-year. We have to get it done within 2 years. That's the gist of it.
Okay, and okay, yeah, it's really funny that I asked about that today.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the decision to do it state accreditation and a national accreditation? Is it money? Is it resources? Is it police size? What does that mean, just for the common folk real quickly, when it comes to that, why that is?
Basic bottom line, it does come down to money and maintenance. The national CLIA standards that a lot of departments have went to back 20 years ago, the national standards, they have went to that standard because that was the only thing that was available. But the CLIA standards have started putting in more and more restrictions and different things that the police departments cannot meet. and the cost kept going up. One of the latest standards deals with the police departments have to have secure buildings that meet the needs of the CALEA. And those are millions and millions of dollars to build a new police building to house some of the CALEA requirements. And we have to meet all the requirements to be accredited. So almost every state in the country has gone to a state accredited system because of cost. And some of the proofs are very similar, almost identical, but some of the other outside things that are not required by the states are required by CALEA. And it is unfortunately though, CALEA is losing a lot of their membership because of the different hurdles they're putting in place for the police departments, and the state accreditation is becoming much more a viable option for almost every police department in the nation right now.
A great answer. Thank you. That really helped me because I just didn't know. I was like, why is it, Yep. And then final question, I don't know if you can give numbers out, but how much does it cost for us to do this process as, when it comes to that kind of stuff? Can you talk about that, or is that a contract thing, or?
Deputy Chief can answer that question. He's been crunching the numbers.
Yeah, so the initial accreditation application fee is $2,700. That covers your first 2 years while you go through the process to become accredited. And then it's $1,000 every year after that. And you hold the accreditation for, I believe it's 3 years. At year 3, you have to reaccredit. To be honest, we're so far away from that. I don't know what the cost is, if it's another $2,700 or if there's a reduced fee for that. But the reaccreditation process is just as, if not a little more intense than the original accreditation, because if you think about it, originally the first set is promises, and then the reaccreditation is promises kept. So we have to show that over that period we've maintained those standards. So
I got to tell you, I'm very, very surprised for me, I should say me, that doesn't sound like very much, and I'm surprised that it's that low. And then I promise this is my last question. So when you look at the 2-year process and signing the thing and getting that turned in, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges to that process?
Let the Deputy Chief go ahead and start with that, and I can follow up on that.
So when we took a look at the initial standards to achieve, to make sure that we're not overextending ourselves, or we're not going to back ourselves into a corner where, we have to buy, I'm being facetious, but, we have to buy a helicopter to become accredited. I think really the biggest obstacle is going to be the organization of it all. There's just over 100 qualification standards that we have to meet. And then we have to provide proofs to those standards as well. So we may have to write new policies, change policies that we have in place to meet that standard. But then behind that policy, it's not just good enough to say, well, we have this new policy in hand. We have to provide proofs to show that we're following those policies. And so from a logistical standpoint, there is a lot of work that's going to be done. We have just over 6 or 7 people that are assigned to the accreditation team that will be working on this for the next, we set ourselves a 15-month goal as part of our goals and objectives for 2021. So that's our goal. We get 2 years, but we want a little cushion in case we need to clean some things up when we do our mock assessment at the end of this tunnel.
The one thing that I'm excited about it is because I teach policy development around the country for Northwestern University. And when I came on board here 2 months ago, I knew that East Lansing Police Department was not accredited. And I knew around the country the other departments were accredited. And so that was probably the first thing we talked about the first week I was on board, that we're gonna go down that path. And actually, Deputy Chief and Captain, they were extremely excited about hearing that from me because of the importance of it, of having standardized policies, standardized procedures involved that other departments around the country have been doing it for many, many years, and we have not. And so it was a great initiative to get that going, and having a Deputy Chief and Captain embrace that wholeheartedly. It was exciting for me personally to see that they were going to take this lead and run with it, making sure that we get up to speed where we need to be.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to ask those questions at the end there,
no problem.
Commission. Appreciate it. So that we'll move on to item 6, to adjournment. Before we get to that item, I just wanted to say on my perspective, again, I've learned so much. I really appreciate everyone that's been involved. It's been a wonderful last few months. I look forward to working with you in the second half of this thing here in 2021. And I hope everyone has a safe and blessed holiday season. And we come back even stronger with those drafts and those presentations going in January. January sounds like a really powerful month to really get over the hump and some of these different things and really be rolling. So I just want to say thanks to everyone involved on my behalf here. And so I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison, seconded by Commissioner Williams. Any discussion on that adjournment? Any comments? Everyone have happy holidays. We are adjourned. Everyone say aye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Any opposed? Take care. Bye-bye now.
Okay,
Thank you so
bye-bye.
much, everyone.
Happy holidays.